Hi there, I'm Stan Baker, one of the hosts of Circle Forum, along with Shelley Steele and Steve Young. Our guest this episode is Dallis Novelli, a teacher and education officer literacy from Education Quality and Accountability Office, EQAO, in Ontario. Speaking from her experience in the classroom, Dallis talks about things that impact student attendance and students attending class. Things like relationship building needs to be built, it's not automatic. Food and games enhance student engagement.
This episode is brought to you by Student Engagement. Physical activity and short brain breaks with games during lessons can improve student focus, behavior and cognitive performance. Games can re-energize students and make them more engaged in their schoolwork. Cribbage, anyone?
At the end of this episode, be sure to visit our website, www.restorative.ca, where you can find all kinds of examples of different things that you can do with students from a relational perspective to build that community in your classroom. Now, let's head over to that conversation with Shelley, Steve, and me, Stan. Were there some ideas that kind of stood out for you as being particularly effective or helpful when talking about student attendance?
Obviously, you're talking about more than student attendance, but those relationships, when I'm listening to some of your administrators that you've talked to, are they ensuring that they're creating those relationships with the staff? Because when you're doing that and you're modeling that, then you're creating that environment and that culture in your school to have those relationships in the classroom. It has to be more than just coming to teach. I want to get to know you as a person. And when your administrators do that, then teachers have that segue into, okay, then you're, as my students, you're here to learn, absolutely, but it's more than the curriculum. So I just think having that global picture of what it looks like to build the relationships as administrators, but also in the classroom. So yeah, anyway, that's one of the golden threads that unfortunately, I walk down the street and I listen to a podcast and I'll be going out loud to myself, yes, yes.
But to your point, Del, nobody ever says how to do that. There was never really a conversation about how are you doing that? How are you focusing?
What does it look like?
What specifically are you doing?
The interesting thing around soft skills or the relationship building is you may not know that you don't have them, right? Mm-hmm. It's not generally somebody says, actually, you know what? For a supervisor, say, actually, you need to do a little better on how you build relationships. As an adult saying that to an adult, that's just not a conversation we generally have, right?
Yeah. Our wake-up call was usually, okay, we're going to move you to another school now. Why? We think you need another start. Okay. What have I done wrong?
Yeah. And just having that reflection piece can be difficult, right? Do we step back and reflect on, what worked and what didn't? I was listening to a lot of your content thinking, okay, so how did that fit with some of the things that I learned with sharing, being open, showing and displaying those relationships, right? One of the stories that Stan and I shared that was a big one was building community. We have a lot of children in care in Ontario, and I've been teaching for 26 years. I guess I got more aware with how to embed those relationships in the classroom by feeling more confident over the years with being able to pull back a little bit more from the curriculum, like not being so curriculum focused and being more student focused. I started teaching kids how to play crib. I get kids to come to my classroom. Unfortunately, it was first period. It was to build in a reason for them to want to be there. That's how I started my math course. That was scheduled first thing in the morning is, we're going to learn how to play crib. And it's a numbers game. Little by little, I had decks of cards for everybody, and I talked about the first element of the game, and I just unpacked it for them. And then had all the crib boards there. And that's actually what we did for the first few weeks of my math class, because I said to them, oh, we're going to play crib any chance we get. And I found my students were coming to class and they were like, when are we playing crib? And I'd be like, oh, we're going to do this first. But then we're going to have time to start a crib game. The great thing about crib is you don't have to finish it. I can still beat you if I only get halfway through the game, right? It was very empowering for the students, because some of these students have never engaged in that at home. So here they were sharing in a game, and you got to get to know your students, because you're bantering and you're playing a game and you're having conversations. And then they too are getting to know other students in the class, because they're competent now at playing crib. So they'll play it with anybody who's ready to play a game in the class. And then I gave every student a crib board to take with them at the end of the term, when kids wouldn't normally interact with certain students. Now they will, because they don't care who they can play crib with. They just want to play the game. So that's been a big one. And it certainly helped with attendance. But the other thing is the food. We do have food programs. The way it's set up in many of our schools is it's a place to go where students could pick something up. Some students don't want to go to that room and pick up food. And then I see, even though anyone is welcome there, I still don't want anyone to see me. I'm embarrassed, or I feel like other people are looking at me or judging me. As an educator, I often would snag a few things from there and make that accessible right in my classroom, in the middle of the table. And then it was just grab a snack.
Your practice is actually backed up by research. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh,
but there is a research-based program in the States called Breakfast After the Bell. And what they have found is that they can increase attendance by moving the breakfast program into the classroom day, so that the first 10 to 15 minutes of the day is everybody sharing food. Because like you say, not everyone has family meal time. And for you as a teacher, you can teach things like pass the orange, thank you, so some manners, but also just get an emotional read on where kids are at coming in. So that really gives you a heads up on when things are going well or maybe not so well in terms of emotional regulation of kids coming into the classroom.
Playing, what we call low-tech games, card games and board games and things like that, while teaching a skill, a math skill or whatever. They're also teaching those relationship skills that a lot of them don't have, and don't have games like that at home, even, or even somebody to play with. So that's a good thing.
My onboarding is to actually have the students write about themselves, and then I sit and conference with each of them one by one, because I want to talk about what they wrote, and then they have that opportunity to have that time with me. And let me tell you, like, what a world of a difference that makes for every assignment, for every, like, when you're onboarding, where you're meeting every student individually, you're providing that equity that they all deserve in your classroom. And it's going to avoid not understanding or knowing where they're coming from. It's going to avoid the struggle of, why haven't you done this? Or it avoids also if I know that a student has to get up to move around because they can't sit, or that they're not disrupting the class. And I already know that because I onboarded and had conversations about, how do you learn best? And what are you looking forward to in this class? And what sort of things do you think that I need to know now? And when you're providing that foundational relationship piece, because I care. I'm actually giving you the time individually. You just find that students feel like you care about them and you care about their success. Like,
Yeah, the difference is that conversation though about it as
Yeah.
well, right? It's meaningful then, that this, not just I'm writing this for my English teacher, she's going to mark it and maybe she's going to take something out of it, but I wouldn't necessarily know that, or that it was meaningful at all, right? But by having the conversation, I know that you're finding it meaningful and you're hearing my voice, and you're also getting yourself some conversation starters for the whole semester about asking about the dog or the cottage or whatever might have come up in their stories as well. And that's what we hear from students. If you don't feel seen, safe is one thing, but if you don't even feel like anybody cares whether or not you're in the building, when we talk about attendance, and I've shared this story often in my role as a school counselor, at a 16-year-old girl in there who caused no issues for anybody. But one day she said to me, I don't even know if the teacher knows my name. So those are the kids that drift away and don't graduate. They've not caused any issues. They're not getting asked to leave. But if you don't really think anybody cares whether you're there or not, then I may not keep coming.
It's a different way of teaching, that relationship, starting with the relationship and working out. But we found that the studies will all show that the kids that have relationships with their teachers that are positive will attend school. They will come to school. So it is important that teachers intentionally try to find those times to build those relationships with kids, whether it's an assignment, whether it's playing cribbage, whether it's having that opening circle every day. And we've taught restorative to teachers over the years, and the high school teachers are more reluctant to do that simply because they say, I only have this much time. I don't have time to do that. And we'll say, you've all got the same amount of time. Take 10 minutes at the start of the period, because if you do that in September, by October, November, you won't have to, you'll maximize the value of the rest of your time because your relationships will be so much better.
What would you say, Dallis, in terms of overcoming the resistance to taking the time to build these connections? How would you suggest that people proceed? Because it impacts attendance, right?
In my past of being a literacy coach, I always have been able to transform a classroom practice by showing results. So the way to do it is to show them how it impacts their students, because when a teacher sees those results in the classroom, that'll change the way they approach something. And that's how I did it when I was doing any type of literacy training in a classroom, is I'd say, watch and let's see what happens. And when they would say, oh, my children love writing, or I've never seen them do this before, or talk like this, or whatever, it's like, yeah, so it works. So you can transform a practice if you actually are able to do it. Job embedded professional development, and it will impact a teacher because they see it happening to their own students. I think about how many times we've shared that when a student comes late or has missed school and has finally shown up, don't give them the gears. You're saying, oh, Shelley, how are you? I missed you yesterday. Oh, Steve, you slept in this morning. That's okay. Good to see you. Or don't even say that. Just say, hey, Steve, oh, come on over. We know their background is that there isn't anybody to wake them up every day. They're the ones that rolled out of bed and came on their own to school. So we only have control of what happens in our school. So that being said, we want to make sure that if our students come in late, we bring them over, and we may even, here's a cereal bar, and here, this is where we are right now, and thank you for coming. And when they, going back to Shelley's student that said, I don't even think that the teacher knows my name, when we acknowledge that we are happy to see them and that we're glad that they're there today, then they're going to know how good that made them feel and they're going to show up tomorrow because they're going to remember that it doesn't matter if I show up late or if it doesn't matter that I didn't get out of bed yesterday, that teacher is going to be happy to see me. So just showing a teacher how they're like something as simple as that can transform some of those students that don't show up, can change their practice. It can change their approach.
Before COVID, I was part of a ministry meeting with superintendents and directors from Northwestern Ontario. And there was a presentation from the ministry on comparing the results of EQAO tests and attendance. And they actually had a report. And I was looking at this and I was just absolutely gobsmacked that, and it's not surprising, but students who had lower attendance, their EQAO scores were 15 to 20% lower than kids who were at school. That was shocking enough. The thing that was even more shocking to me was at the end of the presentation, there were no questions, there was no discussion, and there was really no action. It was just like hanging out there. And I thought, what's it going to take internally to shake people awake to something that's sitting right in front of you, basically, that EQAO scores will improve if kids come to school?
There seemed to be this big rally of excitement from parents during the pandemic where families were going, holy smokes, being a teacher is hard. And here I am with one child or maybe two or whatever, like the family dynamics were. And so it's really seemed like the world came together and said, like, we are so much more grateful. I don't know how you do this with a classroom of 25 children. Things have shifted already from that to, and it's just, it's surprising. And the actions aren't there to think, oh, I have more of an urgency to send my child to school because I see the learning that has to happen and how important it is for my child to be at school because there's so many things I can't do.
What would your 3 wishes be if you could wish for anything regarding student attendance and student achievement? What would you wish for? 3 of them.
Ooh.
And no wishing for more wishes.
Oh,
to clarify.
darn it.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So if I were queen of the education world.
Good start. Good start.
Yeah.
Is that wish number 1?
That's
Just
funny.
keeping
That's
track.
good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
I definitely would love for all our educators to have the skills and the confidence and knowledge to build the relationship and community in their classroom, because that would be number 1. Number 2, food. We all, and I don't care what podcast you're listening to, we all know that food brings people together. And so food that is not needing to be fundraised and out there looking for handouts from the community, that would free up a lot of things. So those are my top 2. Oh, a third. I'd like to wish for more wishes so I could go on.
Sorry, but that's not allowed.
What's my third most impactful? Relationship building piece. It has just so many layers and components that it does put the student first, and it provides a culture and environment that's intentional, and it provides that champion that I'm here for you and what you do is important. And Shelley said it's the seen and the heard. It's that belonging piece. And when they have that, they want to be there. And if I want to be there and I want to learn, then the sky's the limit.
It's been our tradition to give Shelley the last word.
Even though he
Steve,
probably edits out every time. But anyway,
Oh,
yeah.
does he?
said, well, he might.
you have to listen to the podcast
I
to
will, I
know
will.
for sure. But Steve gets the third last word. So,
I get the
Steve.
third last word. I just appreciate that your main piece is looking at the students and getting to know them as learners and as people before you worry about the curriculum. Great.
Dallas, you get the second last word.
I want to tell you one more piece that I did as a teacher. That was my 100%. It was an assignment that was completed 100% by all of my students with no grades. It was a letter that they wrote to themselves and sealed. 100% of my students completed their letter knowing they were getting no grades for it. Because they felt like at the end of the semester that they were valued. They felt valued in my classroom because it was about them. And when you have students that are coming back to you 5 years later saying, oh my goodness, I just read the letter that you sent me, and this is what I've done. I just thought I would share with you because it was so exciting to hear myself 5 years ago. Like, that's the joy, the real opportunity to see who they are at different stages, because we don't always get to see where those kids go and what they do. And when they come back to you 5 years later and share how excited they are to hear themselves, it's pretty amazing.
That is an amazing story. I like your phrase, pockets of success. So you're looking for your pockets of success to build culture. And that was with staff as well as students. And the teaching the how came through loud and clear. And it has been my experience when we've been able to have the time with teachers to show them what they're doing is having impact, because sometimes they're already doing things, but they don't understand the impact they're having. So they're understanding the how, but also the impact. It absolutely becomes embedded in their practice, and it just changes the way they do things. So I think that was such an important message. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
When educators can demonstrate to others the success of a simple practice like student writing a letter to themselves, as Dallas talks about, the ideas catch on when teachers see how it works. It takes simple gestures of caring and acknowledgement to impact student attendance. Find out more about our work with restorative practices and student attendance at www.restorative.ca. You can send me an email to stan@restorative.ca. There's a lot about attendance that's outside of the control of our teachers and our classrooms, so it's important for teachers to engage students where they can. And that's in the classrooms, and that's with games.